Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome back to the third installment of my 2025 Holiday Gift Guide series. In the first two videos, we took a look at the Starfinder role-playing game and the Dungeons & Dragons modern version, or 2024, 2025 version, whatever you want to call it, in their own separate videos. But today we're just going to talk about some other really fantastic fantasy RPGs out there that would make some great gifts for groups that are maybe trying to, do something different, or maybe they have some of the other established games and just looking for some new things to add to those collections. So we're going to start today with the Pathfinder 2nd Edition role-playing game. Now, when it comes to Pathfinder 2e, one thing that can always be useful are the core rules, and I know that the hardcover books can be expensive, but there are alternatives, as the player core books, both 1 and 2, the GM core, and the monster core books. So these are all available in pocket editions. So for roughly half the price of the hardcover books, you could get one of these for a friend who may be interested in trying Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or again, if you're looking to maybe try something a little bit different at your gaming table, those are definitely options there. We also had the release of something that could help with looking to get into Pathfinder for the first time. And that is going to be the release of... I can stop getting everything messed around here. And that was the release of the Pathfinder Game Night Dawn of Frogs. So this is a box set that is literally just a game night in a box. You don't need anything else to run this other than the contents of what's provided here. So you do get like pre-generated characters, you get some basic rules descriptions, you have a scenario, and you have a standard set of dice here, along with some token or punch-out standees and double-sided poster maps and stuff like that you'll be able to use for this. So this is, like I said, you don't need anything else. So if you are interested in trying Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but you don't necessarily want to spend the amount of money for like the core books, this box set is $34.99 US. And again, you get a full game night with you and up to 4 friends, sitting around the table playing some Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So, for 4 to 6 hours of enjoyment, I think that's a pretty fair price compared to, trying to do something for that amount of time. Financially, it's a pretty decent bargain. So this is this pretty interesting box set here. Some unique art choices that are meant to sort of catch the eye of individuals. I still think Valeros is a little unhinged in the box art there, but again, if you're looking to get somebody into Pathfinder, or you're curious about it yourself, the Game Night box set is fantastic. And then if you find yourself enjoying it after that, of course, you can look at getting the various pocket editions. If you're already into Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you're just looking for some stuff to do with your group, this year we did see the release of the Gatewalker's Adventure Path, redone for the 2nd Edition remastered version, and all in one hardcover book, an entire campaign for characters levels 1 through 10 for $69.99. And this is one of the more, like, for me, this was a adventure path that I was really interested in running. The Starfinder release kind of changed directions for me here, but this is a campaign I definitely plan on running. It's very Lovecraftian in that there's sort of like this period of missing time for hundreds of people throughout Galarian. Some individuals have less or have a larger gap in their memory than others, and some individuals actually have like unique abilities and powers that they've found that they've gained after awakening. So, the campaign's kind of about trying to figure out what's behind it, what happened during that time, and and dealing with the ramifications from there. So, like I said, very kind of Lovecraftian style of campaign, and I'm completely there for it. So that is the Gatewalker's book. And we've also had some pretty notable hardcover releases this year. Some of these might have pocket editions available, but I don't have all of them currently. So the first one we're going to take a look at here is the NPC Core. Now, I have done a video flipping through this one already, and I actually do have the Pocket Edition, and I also have, and I haven't opened these up yet, but I really should, but I also have the battle cards. Now, if you, again, know somebody that is like your Pathfinder GM, these cards are so useful. That's basically what I use now in my games when I'm running, like even by Starfinder game. They're going through sort of like a fantasy-inspired scenario right now. So I've been using like these or the Bestiary or the Monster Core or the NPC battle cards for that. So these are just the stat cards for everything that's included inside of this book. Though it doesn't include like any of the rules options or some of the extra bits of information that you may want out of this book. These are purely just the stat blocks, but a really great gift as well. And again, like I said, you've got the Pocket Edition, you've got the hardcover version, and again, these are just different groups of NPCs based off of different like professions. So you'll have like nobility, you'll have military, you'll have criminal organizations, and then there are some ancestry-specific ones, so like for dwarves and elves and things along those lines. So there's some really, really cool stuff in this book, and if you're looking to get any like hardcover, and you can only afford one for 2025, like you're looking to get a gift for somebody, this book is super, super useful. So it's the one that I would recommend the most of all the books that we're going to take a look at here. And we've only got a couple more. We're sticking to just the mainline releases. There were some Lost Omen stuff, but that's a little bit more niche. So we're just going to kind of stick to the major things here. We also had the release of Battle Cry. And I don't know if I actually took a look at this book yet or not. I'm getting the Pocket Edition. It is on its way to me. But with Battle Cry, I didn't mean to hit the camera. With Battle Cry, you kind of have like your mass combat options, like your war-style campaigns. And you got two new classes here that they've introduced. And one of them is the... where is it here? The Commander and Guardian. So... the Commander is kind of cool. So this is the Commander class here. They have abilities that allow them to use like their reaction to trigger their allies' reactions to do certain things, like to regroup or to, you know, advance towards a target, or even to get like attacks against the target, depending on what orders the Commander gives out. And then with the Guardian, they're all about kind of like, again, drawing enemies towards them, and they get all kinds of like special reactions as well. Both the classes here deal really heavily in utilizing their reactions, and sometimes they can bestow a special reaction to perform like the exact action, but for the most part, you're still looking at your standard action economy. I don't think they actually gain additional reactions. It's just they have a wealth of them to use in combat. So, but yeah, a really interesting book. And again, if you wanted to run a campaign that revolves around like mass conflicts and war, this is a great one to have for that. And then finally, we had the release of the Monster Core Book 2. So yeah, just another book full of monsters, and you can never go wrong with some of these. I think a lot of these are pulled from some of the Lost Omens books. You know, sort of put them into the new updated Pathfinder remaster version of the game. But again, there's just some fantastic stuff in here. I did already do a video on this one as well. So just like some cool creatures, and you can never have enough options for you when you're looking to run your at-home campaigns. Again, we got the Migo there, speaking of like Lovecraftian stuff earlier. So there's some really fantastic stuff in here as well. And you can never go wrong by adding more monsters to your game. So that was a look at sort of like the Pathfinder releases, but we do have some other fantasy RPGs, so why don't we take a look at some of those? All right, so up next, we've got probably the game that is technically fantasy, but probably grounded more in reality, although it is a fantastical version of that reality. But I thought I would include it in here anyway, and that is the Pendragon role-playing game. So if you have a group that wants to play as like medieval knights in King Arthur's court, then this is the campaign for you, or this is the game for you. It uses a D20 style system. It's not the exact D20 system, but you have like a D20 and a bunch of D6 there. I think it's a roll under system as well, so you're trying to roll like a target number or below. But there's some interesting concepts behind it, like your knight has their own like code that they have to live by. They have sort of their own moral standings that sort of are always sort of in conflict with one another. So you've got several, I guess I don't know what to call passions, but you have several, attributes, or you have several different, outlooks that are sort of in conflict with one another. So, you've got like chaste, and then you've got like sort of like the opposite, like where you're a bit more, promiscuous. Like seduction is a big part of the game if you want it to be. There's all kinds of cool stuff about this system. It's been a little while since I've looked at it. I did back the recent Kickstarter for the first edition, like re-releases of everything. But yeah, let's just actually take a look at one of the characters here, just so I can try to get the marbles out of my mouth and kind of say these things correctly. And the starter set is loaded with all kinds of additional appendices and things along those lines. But let's just see. So here, traits. There we go. So we have like chaste and lustful, energetic or lazy, forgiving or vengeful. So you've got these sort of aspects of your personality, and you roll basically against them to determine like how you're going to approach or attempt to solve certain situations. And these numbers will always equal out to 20, going across the from one to the other. So you do have like your dominant ones, which are in bold. So they're kind of like based off of like your actual like sworn code. So those are the ones that you want to uphold the most. But there are some other things here as well. And the valorous or cowardly are, I think they're mispresented there, or they're not quite the same as the rest of the traits. But anyway, there's some really cool stuff in here. There's a lot of like really great medieval style art in these books as well, including like one of the best horse pictures I think I've ever seen. So there's some great stuff in here. And again, if you're looking for kind of like, a fantasy game set in like real world, London or England, then this is the game for you. So the starter set has a lot of great stuff in there, but they also, of course, have their core rule book. So this is like to create your own characters and go through and all the different rules. We also have the Game Master's Guide, which I think came out did this come out in 2025? I got to be honest, there's been so much stuff going on that it's hard to keep everything. Straight. Okay, so this came out in 2024, but again, for like details for like running and designing your own games, your own scenarios and campaigns and everything. It's just some really cool stuff in this as well. And if you're looking for an actual campaign, then they do have you covered there as well, because they have the Grey Knight. So this was a classic adventure, I guess, or scenario or campaign from the original, or like some of the earlier editions of the Pendragon role-playing game. So they reproduced those here as well for the updated version. And again, each like scenario or each adventure, or whatever you want to call it, effectively takes up like a year of in-game time. So, if you're running like a long-term thing, your knight can go from like just freshly out of the squire phase to like, venerable and about to retire, that type of thing, depending on how long the campaign goes. So some really cool stuff. And again, it's a fantastic version, or fantasy version of like medieval England. So some really cool stuff in there. And if you wanted to play, like I said, Knights of the Round, then this is the game for you. Another system that might be worth checking out, I know this one has gained quite a bit of popularity, that is Shadowdark. And one of the things that I do like about it right off the bat is that it comes in this handy-dandy, like pocket-sized style of book. However, it is like written to, still be like fully like nice large text and everything, versus like the Pathfinder pocket editions, which are great, but they are scaled down versions of hardcover books, where this is meant to be this size, but still like uses the larger typeface and everything. I played one scenario of this, so I'm not really at the point yet where I'm fully ready to say how much, like, whether I like this system or how much I like the system or not. I'm not a fan of the torch timer. I'm going to be completely and totally honest. I do like the fact, though, that when you start the game, you set an initiative order and you just keep going through that order throughout the entirety of the session. And I like that because it gives everybody an opportunity to do something. And makes it so that you're not having somebody that kind of gets like lost in the, in the cracks sort of thing when other players want to do like these big grandiose things. Like you want to make sure that everybody gets involved. So doing everything in an initiative order, I kind of like. And I think if I were to run this game, once you got into a situation like once you light a torch, I would have it last for a number of rounds. And I would have some variable there so you can't know consistently what the number is going to be. But I would probably do that over the timer. Because I know that people don't want games to get sort of carried away with personal chatter and stuff like that. But sometimes just having the ability just to talk about stuff or to talk tactics and things like that through, your characters wouldn't have to go all through that because they would know what each other's capable of and they would have, been in battles before and they kind of know how each other think, but the players may not. So I'd rather the round, I would rather time the torches with rounds myself than with just a stopwatch timer. But it is a very sort of classic old school feeling RPG. You definitely kind of get your basic expert kind of feel out of it. So I think this is a really cool system. And again, I like the fact that there is a non-copyright violating beholder on there. I'm sure it's called something completely and totally different, but I do love the cover there. And again, it is something that I'm very interested in trying more. It's just I only played one session, so I can't really fully judge it based off of how that one session went. But there are some aspects, like I said, I would probably change the way torches are done to a round system, but still have it be variable so that the players can't get super comfortable with knowing okay, it's been X number of rounds, so the torch is about to go out type of thing. And I might not use the exact same variable twice, so, we'll kind of see how that goes. But for now, really, really cool, sort of classic feeling RPG, but with the modern sensibilities of Ascending Armor class and all that goodness. So yeah, really, really cool system. All right, and then up next, we're going to take a look at the Castles and Crusades role-playing game. So this is their starter set. I have done a video on it already. In fact, I think I've done a starter set Saturday video on it where I did the full review and everything. And this set is really, really cool. I love the artwork. You've got some nice dice in there. You've got, you actually create your characters, so it's not relying on pre-gens, although admittedly, I would think that it might be nice to have some pre-gen characters thrown in there just so you could pick up and play immediately. But the idea of going through character creation is something that I still think is very important for even starter sets and beginners boxes and all that. So if I had to choose between pre-gens or create your own, I would definitely side on create your own characters there. So there's some really great stuff in this. Some easy to follow character creation steps. You've got the how to run the game, and then you've got the Into the Dark there. It's a really, kind of cool, again, classic feeling adventure where there's, of course, the dungeon exploration, location that's the main draw for you. But there are, the sense that other things are going on in the area as well. So there's, wilderness stuff to do as, sort of side adventures. And there's just a lot of really cool stuff in here. The only thing that lets this set down is the way that they decided to produce the books. So they went with the glue binding, which for the character creation book is fine because it's thick enough that you can do that. The other two books are a bit thinner, however, so the glue tends to make it the pages feel like they're kind of scrunched up in the middle towards the spine here. If I can kind of show you there, you kind of see the ripples and stuff there. And it's even worse in the adventure book because it's even thinner. So I'm a little hesitant there. I think that if they were to do this again, staple binding would work perfectly fine. But otherwise, this is just an awesome set. And if you want to get into the Castles and Crusades game, this is a great way to do it. It is the last game that or one of the last games that Gary Gygax worked on. And a lot of people refer to it as what would have been Gygax's version of 3rd edition, because you do have things like ascending armor class that is just easier to explain to individuals, but everything is sort of based off of like skill checks as opposed to different like lists of skill, like it's ability checks, sorry, not skill checks. So like you're rolling for certain attributes, and some of your attributes you're more successful at the checks than others, because like the DC number starts a little bit higher for skill or for abilities that you're not your primary ones. So I think they start at 18, and then you get to add, like, when you roll the check, you get to add your level plus, like, modifiers. But if it's one of your primary skills, I think it starts at 12 for the DC, then plus whatever factors are thrown on there. And, of course, I cannot talk about Castles and Crusades without talking about the incredible throwback covers to the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons one. Like, you may not notice it quite as well in this one here, although you do have the characters trying to pry the gems out of the statue's eye there, and you do have the characters looking over a map while they're taking out some of the dead lizard folk from the game. So you kind of see it a little bit there, maybe, but, you know, you might not notice it right away. This one definitely gives up the fact that these are homage covers. So you've got the Ifrit there with the characters, one of them being grabbed by the Ifriti, and the other two characters kind of fighting it off there. And if that didn't tell you that these are throwback covers to first edition AD&D, then this one has to, because my goodness, it doesn't get much more classic than that, although, you know, we do have some other things going on here as well. Of course, we have our centaur, our unicorn, troll, owlbear, and roper there. But we've also got a Tarrasque in the background, which is looking pretty mean and intimidating. And then back here, we've got our purple worm. We got our carrion crawler. Yeah, just really, really cool books. And again, like a really, you know, quick and easy to learn. Like it's very, very, it's very, very easy to learn system. And this is the kind of game where I think you could go from like, you know, sitting down for the first time, kind of skimming through the books, and you'd be able to create your characters and start playing, I think, relatively quickly. Again, everything functions mechanically, you know, similar based off of the ability score checks. So there's some really cool stuff, and I really, really want to run a Castles and Crusades game. So that is something that is very much on my radar. So those are some of the ones that we've got here. But there's more. We do have some other fantasy RPGs, so I'm just going to clear the table, and we'll take a look at the third and final wave for this video. All right, and for the third and final wave, we are stepping into the Free League pool for some really interesting, really cool fantasy RPGs. The first one that I want to talk about here is one of my current favorites that I cannot wait to run a bit more frequently. Once my Starfinder campaign wraps up, I plan on converting the group over to a Bane game sometime thereafter. I'm not sure how long it'll take to wrap up the Starfinder game, but I have ordered like extra books for everybody in the group. But yeah, we're going to talk about Bane. This is just one of my favorite RPGs out there right now. And it's a really cool system. It's a D20 system, but it's a roll under, so you've got your different skills and attributes that you might be rolling against. And it's not like a leveling system like traditional fantasy RPGs tend towards. Instead, you get certain advancement marks that you get to make throughout the game. So if you use a specific ability and you roll either a natural 20 or a natural 1, so a critical failure for the case of the natural 20 because it's roll under, or a natural 1, you get to put an advancement mark next to that particular skill. And then at the end of the session, there is a little questionnaire that the game master will go through, and for each answer or question that you can answer yes to, you get to select another skill of your choice to put an advancement mark next to. Then to see if your character advances in any of those, you just roll the skills normally, and you actually have to fail the roll. So you have to roll higher than the attribute or the skill number. It's skills, not you don't get to increase the attributes. Those are set once you've got them. but you have to roll above the attribute number in order to advance it. So if you have like a 15, for example, and you one of your weapon skills, and that's the one you want to advance, you do have to roll a 16 or higher, with 18 being the highest that you can possibly get a skill to. But it's a great way to build up skills that, you find that might be useful, more so than you maybe initially thought, that, you're starting to use a lot more. So they start at a much lower number, so they're easier to sort of get to the point where they can start to become more and more viable for you to use. And we do have the hardcover rule book here, which is something that you can pick up. It's available on Free League's site, as well as I think most places where you get your RPG stuff should be able to order this in if they don't already have it in stock. So this is just the standalone hardcover. However, there is also the box set, the Mirth and Mayhem role-playing game. So this is, I guess, kind of a deluxe version of the core rules. The core rulebook actually came out afterwards. The original way to get this was just through the box set. And this comes with a lot of different like game aids. So you've got like your initiative cards, you have improvised weapon and treasure cards, you've got a specialized set of dice. You've also got I might just show it on the back here. You also have the rulebook, which is the exact same rulebook as here. Everything's the exact same. The page numbers and where things are the exact same. The hardcover does have some errata thrown in there. And the errata log is actually on the inside. And that just kind of tells you what changes have been made over the box set here. But this, it also comes with an entire campaign that you can pick up and play right away. And there is another campaign that's been released as a separate hardcover called Path of Glory, which is kind of loosely meant to follow after the campaign in here. It's not that you necessarily need to play that exact campaign to play the Path of Glory adventure. They're not like that closely linked to one another, but it is designed for characters to have like extra abilities and extra skill advancements that they would have earned through this campaign before they start the Path of Glory one. It's not meant to be like the introductory campaign, like the first thing you do for Bane. It's meant to be for a bit more seasoned adventurers, which is why I didn't necessarily include it in this video, but it is worth noting. So yeah, you get some really awesome stuff there. So you got the campaign book, you've got the rule book, which is soft cover. It has a different cover there with just the mallard coming down, but you've got the hardcover that has sort of like that classic Bane artwork to it. And again, just an awesome, awesome system. I can't say enough good things about this one. It's, like I said, it's one of my favorite games. I do have a Friday night group that we have run a few sessions of this for. I want to get back into that. I think we're starting back up in the new year, and I cannot wait. I absolutely love this game. It's kind of got that old school feel again, but it plays really well, and where it's not based necessarily on like level progression, you can just kind of focus more on like the scenarios and the adventures that you're playing. I also like the fact that there is a mechanic for what happens if you leave a dungeon that you haven't cleared out, in that it is entirely possible that either nothing happens or reinforcements arrive, or they send like a scouting party out after the players so they don't get like a good rest and they still have to fight, presumably in the same condition that they left the dungeon in. Or my favorite one is that another adventuring party just swoops in and clears out everything. So they get like all the treasure and all the glory and everything. So there's kind of stuff like that that I really like about this. But yeah, just an awesome, awesome game. Fantastic artwork. Bane is one of my all-time favorites. All right, now, one way to get people into role-playing games, if they're sort of on the fence or have never heard of them or never tried them before, could be to get a game based off of maybe one of their favorite licenses. And we're going to be diving into that pretty heavily in the next video, which is going to be more like sci-fi, science fantasy type of stuff. But if you know somebody that's like a huge Lord of the Rings fan, for example, and you want to get them maybe interested in trying out RPGs, there is the One Ring. And the One Ring just recently launched a newer starter set. The original starter set was fine, but it lacked like the shadow mechanic, which is kind of a big part of the game and something that I think deserves to be in the starter set because it is a mechanic that you need to be aware of. But it also focused on just having the players being hobbits in the Shire, which is fine. Again, like the Hobbit being like the book that came out, I guess before Lord of the Rings or whatever, set before Lord of the Rings, is perfectly fine. But this starter set here, Overhill and Underhill, which I'm actually going to be doing a starter set Saturday review for very, very soon, hopefully before the holidays. This is kind of more your traditional fantasy adventure type of stuff. So like you're not just stuck to the Shire. You are fighting some like more dangerous encounters and facing off against more like fearsome creatures. But yeah, really, really cool. Again, like if you want to use the One Ring or the Lord of the Rings to try to get somebody trying a tabletop RPG, then the One Ring is a great way to start with that. So we got the starter set, and of course we've got the core rule book here as well. And again, this sort of, again, has a kind of old school feel to it there where, combat, it can be deadly, it can be lethal, but you've also got to commit yourself to what you plan to do before the round starts, right? Because in combat, you've got the opening volleys, which you can do if there's spaces between you and your enemies, where archers can fire off, a round of arrows, shots, maybe two if they're like really far away from one another. But once you get into close quarter combat, there are 3 different approaches to it, and once you decide which one you're going to be, you're locked into that. So you can have like a forward stance where basically you're getting bonuses on your combat rolls, so it's going to be more likely that you're going to hit and inflict some serious damage. However, you also grant some bonuses to your enemies, similar to the bonus that you get. Then there's the balance approach where you attack normally, you don't give or give up any sort of like bonuses or penalties or anything like that. And then you have a defensive mode where you lose one of your attack dice, so you're not likely to inflict as much damage or to be able to hit as often, but you also take away one of those combat dice from any opponent that attacks you. So you kind of have to choose that, but once you make that choice, like you're locked in and you're stuck with it. So it's something that you kind of have to think about a little bit, and again, like with older D&D, you were more or less kind of locked into those decisions because initiative used to be turn-based, but it was broken into phases. So if you were going to cast a spell, you had to declare that and likely had to know which spell it was, even at the, when the round began. So just from that aspect of it, I really do kind of like that concept just because, it has you thinking about kind of what you're doing. You do have to make that decision. So yeah, the One Ring, based on the Lord of the Rings here, just a really fantastic role-playing game. So again, if you know somebody that loves the Lord of the Rings and you're trying to get them into tabletop RPGs, then this might be the way to go. Now, maybe you have a friend who is really big into Lord of the Rings, and maybe they already are into tabletop RPGs. Maybe they're into like D&D 5th edition. Well, we've got a couple of things that are designed for 5e, but they're designed by third-party companies. In this case, like I said, Free League. So we have that exact same starter set from the One Ring, but we have it for the Lord of the Rings role-playing, which is designed to be used with the 5th edition D&D game. So there's no rules in this because the rules are based off of 5e and not their own proprietary rule set like you have with the One Ring. But you do have this really cool starter set. This is the first actual starter set for the 5e version of the Lord of the Rings game. The original release did have them come out with a hardcover book that was the scenarios and the pre-gen characters from the One Ring starter set, but it didn't come with like the dice or any of that stuff. It was just a hardcover book that had all the contents, but none of the but it wasn't a box set. Here we got an actual dedicated starter set, which is awesome to have here. And of course, we also have the Lord of the Rings role-playing rule books here. So this is the core rule book, which does require, again, the D&D 5e books for the combat system and all that. But really, really cool. So again, if you know somebody that's into Lord of the Rings and they're like maybe 5e is the only game they played so far, then this is a great way to transition them towards something else and maybe introduce them to a company like Free League, which in my opinion is the best, or at least one of the best RPG producing companies out there in the world today. All right, so we got one more here. I was going to include the original, but I think I'm just going to stick with this 5e version because the 5e version uses the D20 system rules, and the original one is interesting, and I kind of want to run it, but it's got a rule set where like the game master never touches a die. It's everything that's done, like any dice rolling is always done by the players. So some groups aren't going to necessarily be as keen on that, but we do have the Ruins of Symbaroum for the 5e game. So we got our player's guide here. We've got our game master's guide. And we've got our bestiary. So again, you still need like the combat rules for D&D 5e if you don't have them already. So that could be the player's handbook. That could be the free basic rules that are available on D&D Beyond as well. But yeah, this is sort of like a dark fantasy role-playing game, and I like the artwork. I love sort of like the darker nature of the system in the way that it's presented. I haven't really had a chance. I've never had a chance to play or run Symbaroum, the original version, but the 5e one here again will use those more familiar 5th edition rules, and I think that personally, might make this to be a bit more palatable for people that are maybe looking to branch out a little bit, but still play something familiar, right? So these 5e compatible, games from Free League do a really good job of being just that, right? Like it's a game where the rules are familiar, so you don't have to learn like a whole new system, but the world feels very, very different, and you get this like just incredibly different take on a fantasy system or fantasy setting, I should say. That you get from the Ruins of Symbaroum. So really, really cool stuff. So there we go. Those are some fantastic fantasy RPGs. Let me know in the comments below. There's tons of others that I have missed out on in this video. So if you know some other fantasy RPGs, feel free to share them in the comments below. Again, I know like with the 5e video, and I just want to reiterate, I don't care if you have a difference of opinion, like that's totally fine. But, we need to start learning how to be a bit more respectful in the way that we communicate with one another. It's cool if you don't like 5e. It's cool if you're not interested in these last two things here because they are like representative of the 5th edition, or I guess this one here, because you use the 5th edition rules. But just, again, you can be respectful. You don't have to be aggressive or confrontational or anything like that. Like, it's just my channel is not a place for people to come and be negative. There's enough negativity on the internet. If that's what you're looking for, you're gonna find it. So like I said, feel free to leave recommendations, but you can talk about the things that you enjoy without having to tear down things that you may not, but others do. So let's just kind of keep everything nice and positive. We're all in the same hobby, and, I think that's the thing that matters at the end of the day. So leave your other fantasy suggestions in the comments below, sort of for fantasy games. I mean, there's things like Dungeon Crawl Classics, there's the Fantasy Age games. I know Dragon Age isn't in production anymore, which is sad. But there's all kinds of like other like old school revival, retro clone stuff out there as well, like basic fantasy and whatnot. So if there's other games, like I said, let me know or let others know in the comments below. But just focus on the game that you like, and you don't have to tear down other games at the same time. So anyway, thank you all so very much for your time. I truly appreciate it. We will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.